In my Teach 219 class, we have gone over many different definitions of literacy. I have had the opportunity to compare and contrast our views of literacy with my peers. At the beginning of the semester, we soon discovered that literacy has a broad definition and is specific to each person's content area. My candidate that I interviewed is a local artist named Alyssa Palmer. She has completed her BFA program at the Illinois State University and is a visual artist who focuses on painting, illustrating, and also writing. She is currently a freelance artist and a receptionist at the university galleries. This is a photo of Alyssa at the Amy Cousins exhibition opening. Her job as a receptionist is to basically guard and to greet people as they walk into the gallery. She explains the exhibitions they have installed. So to do this effectively, she must read about the artist and their practice and look at their work before attempting to introduce guests to the show. I asked Alyssa to supply me with an artist statement. This was for me to be able to understand her experience in our living world. So her practice goes on to basically think about the here and the now. Remembrance is pertinent to my practice. Figures that once occupied my space no longer. An abundance of transient memories constantly occupy my mind. Film photographs I take supplement these hazy and imperfect memories. I am interested in how manipulated materials elicit a sense of familiarity. The tactility of my material play an important role in remembrance in the passage of time. I collect and assort paper to use as a ground for immediate drawings. I rip diaphanous sheets of fabric and paper to absorb the plastic fluid and chalky substances to render lived moments. I control color, line, shapes, and textures to create space. I direct attention to areas that represent touch. Two arms overlap, a finger touches the background, a door recedes into the wall, or clothing hits skin. Loose lines of charcoal spread on collaged grounds, having a fluctuating energy. A firm stroke of lime green paint insists it has a purpose in its placement. Look closer into the moments I capture. I am drawn to people and their environments and observe the way they move, their natural gestures and expressions. I experience a sense of control once I have rendered a form. What does it mean to collect a myriad of past fragmented moments from which to source? I am holding on to these past experiences by rendering the shapes and color, or am I letting go of them? I asked Alyssa to further explain her practice. What are the types of materials she likes to use? She typically works with paper, charcoal, graphite, fabric, conch, pencil, and pen. She doesn't have a set plan of how she's going to use these materials, but she's developing an understanding of why she's drawn to the materials in the first place. As an artist, I'm expected to not only produce work, but also speak and write about it. She's developed a rhetoric and confidence through her studies that helps evaluate and conceptualize her work, whether that be through sculpture, painting, drawing, texture, or a myriad of all of these materials. The most exciting thing about literacy as an artist is the constant flux of ideas and movement. Our lifestyle ideally is not stagnant. Ideas form, work is produced, work is altered, added to, taken away from. Thought about again and repeated. This is a photo that I took of her studio. You can see that she is very much so interested in paper and the applications that we can add to it. So she's thinking about the surface area and time. So the quality of building up over time and that repetition. This is a show that she has done in the past. You can see here that she is focusing on what paper can and cannot do. Literacy within art. She had stated before this interview she had not put much thought into the literacy practice of her job at the gallery or as an artist. But when I think about it, there are so many components of language, text, context, and communication that one must be sensitive to when you're surrounded by artists and working with a small team. Her research takes form in website searching, reading interviews, or listening to the artists when they are in the space. Being literate for me means not only researching artists and using language as a stepping stone for guests, but it means being open to new experiences and taking on tasks she doesn't already know how to do. An example of this was when she helped Aaron Washington build a dome. She did not know what a geostatic dome was before her task of building one. She also did not know she would be helping convert the metric system into American or imperial measurements so that the curator, Jason Judd, would know how much wood to purchase, and then she would also assist Jason Huffman in putting the pieces together like a life-size Lego kit. So necessary skills that differ from her tradition. She's highly emphasized a literacy and respect and good attitude. Although most disciplines should emphasize good attitudes, I feel that in a space where you represent a wider body of people, it is very important. We have a small staff, 4 full-timers, 5 student workers. She approaches her part here as representing herself and the gallery. In this discipline, each person should be comfortable in some capacity speaking with strangers and interacting with professionals. None of us will be hiding behind a desk. Specific cultural components. I asked her what she thought about this, and she definitely agrees that it's important to consider the differences that we each hold. Oftentimes, we have cultural baggage that we bring with our daily interactions. We don't really think about it, but we have these preconceived things in our minds that we need to break down. So she went on to say that not only as an art gallery worker, but also as a painter, it is assumed that I know what terms are, such as abstract and realism means. Not everyone visiting the gallery has looked at art before and thought about it conceptually. Not everyone's backgrounds are in an art discipline. So there's a lot of jargon in art practice and a lot of ambiguity. She has students from general visual courses whose first time having to analyze pieces here. If I see someone staring at a piece for a while or looking puzzled, I approach them and ask if I should help gauge questions. I tend to not know if I'll be able to answer their questions or not, but I'm not the artist and I do not have a perfect reading on every single piece we have displayed. What I try to do is help define terms the professors would like them to think about or point out material usage and maybe why that material is being used. Cultural impact. I asked her if growing up in the U.S. hasn't impacted her in any way, and she has stated that the narrow view of education is not being exposed in many art spaces as a child left me with a narrow vision of what art was. She would say growing up in the U.S. has impacted her artist practice and knowledge in her discipline. Up until college, I was primarily taught about the Western world's history and our accomplishments. I have to be aware of cultural symbols and the use of materials as not appropriate work, but also to form a dialogue with artists that do use their cultural heritage as a driving force in their work. She tries to approach each artist as an opportunity to learn about the world from their point of view, which is incredibly important to think about in the classroom. As teachers, we need to break down our walls in order to not have prejudices. Entry-level literacy skills to learn. So besides having an understanding of basic computer communication and team working skills, about any other aspect to her job is learned. She has learned how to handle artwork, how to paint a 16-foot wall without streaks, how to archive information into FileMaker, effectively organize data into Excel, how to approach guests who remove backpacks or drinks kindly, and how to build a box out of scrap cardboard. She's had to apply these to her own practices as well because it's helped her be a better artist. She's now able to file information and be able to walk up to strangers and form a positive and thoughtful discussion. This is a piece that she had to help install. So she had painted the background green, and then the artist had specific needs for how the artwork was to be hung. She has to follow those guidelines precisely. How did you learn specific literacy skills? So she enjoys to learn new tasks and skills she doesn't already know. So when she's asked to work with something that she's familiar, she goes ahead and finds the resources she needs to pursue the task and then finishes it. When she's befuddled, she'll ask questions, but hands-on experience is the best way to learn anything. She states that I ask questions when needed and also ask to take upon new responsibility has been proven helpful. Experimenting in my own practice translates to how I approach my job at the gallery. I tend to not wait for a project to be given to me, but instead I ask if I can help with anything. Showing ambition and a readiness to learn translates a good team bond and trust. How can schools improve essential literacies in art? Visiting gallery spaces and art spaces would only do students good. There is not one type of gallery or museum. There are so many facets to these spaces. Some are more formal, others are educational, some contain works from thousands of years ago, while others are contemporary. Alyssa also stated students being exposed to multiple spaces from a young age would help them develop a stronger sense of the different components art practices take in. Schools also teaching students that artists-related occupations are extremely valuable, such as archiving, conservation, art handlers, curators, jewelers, bookbinders, woodworkers, designers, art teaching, and technology. Those are a lot of different positions in the art world that we can apply. The last thing that she had stated, the painter in me wants education to teach students that there is no such thing as perfection in creating something. The end goal in an art practice is not to solve a problem and then you're done, or to create a perfect visual, but instead it's the act of making a way to translate something that you find important. Thank you, Alyssa.